This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, welcome everybody to another edition of Squash Canada's Coach PD webinar series. I am pleased to say that this one here today is going to be very informative and very exciting with respect to the current worldwide pandemic that we're in, and our presenter talking about COVID-friendly squash programming to give you some ideas about how you can get squash going in your clubs as we hopefully return to play in the coming weeks and months, and for the various restrictions across the country. Our presenter today will give you all kinds of wonderful ideas. So our presenter today is Mark Porter, who is the squash pro at the Toronto Lawn in Toronto, and he is going to talk to you about those great programs that he is doing in Toronto and what he's done over the last year. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark, but just before I do, if you have any questions today, Mark is going to kind of ask you if you have any questions after kind of each section of the presentation as well as at the end. So if you do have questions, Mark will let you know when to ask, and feel free to chime in the chat, or you can unmute and ask during the presentation. So we're hoping for a very engaging discussion for the next hour, and we hope you enjoy. Take it away, Mark.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. And thanks everyone for coming out. Hopefully there's a couple of things you can take away from today and implement at your clubs. I just want to say a lot of these programs were actually huge for me last spring, summer, fall, as we were just kind of get back going. They're a good way to get members back on court, and they're a good way for me to get back to work. So with that, I'll just start off here with, I'll state the obvious. Obviously, impact of COVID-19, it's had a varied effect region by region across the country. I know some places, for example, Ontario, we haven't been on court since November, but other places, BC, Alberta, they've been back on court. Northwest Territories, I'm not sure where they've been, but it's, I think Ontario has had the toughest restrictions through all of this. We've seen everything from solo hitting only to same household play to distance drills to full-on squash with masks, in some places with masks and others. So it's really changed kind of what we have to do to get people back on court. Most people, I think, have seen a decrease in activity over the past year, and that might, activity might vary. I saw an increase in lessons for a while because that's all that people were allowed to do. But I'm sure in some way or another, you might have seen a decrease in lessons or an increase in lessons and decrease in programming. But it's going to be up to us over the next little bit as we rebuild our programs to be creative and navigate the various restrictions, and not only the restrictions from the government, but also members' comfort levels. People are going to have different opinions, different comfort levels with getting back on court, and it's going to be kind of our jobs to see what we can do to push them in the right direction or make them feel comfortable with returning to court. So the first thing is just kind of capturing an audience. These things are different. They're modified programs, they're modified events. They're not going to be for everybody, or you're going to have to convince people a little bit, hey, give it a try and you're going to enjoy it. So some of the barriers you might run into, you might get that person who just says, I'm not comfortable with coming back to the squash court yet. I don't want to be on court with somebody else. I don't feel comfortable, so I'm not going to do it. You might have a group of people just say, they're intimidated, they don't know what to do. There are rules in place and they're not sure what kind of activities they can do to abide by those rules. And the same sort of thing, people don't know what to do, so they get on court. I saw a lot last fall, 2 members getting on court. There are rules in place, but they didn't really know how to maximize what they were allowed to do on court to get a good session. There's going to be a lot of people who are skeptical that's going to be fun. People want to play real squash. So, I heard it a bunch last year. Well, I'm not coming back until I can play full squash with my friends, or I'm not coming back until I don't have to wear a mask. So it's going to be up to us to really push them in the right direction and convince them, hey, this is going to be fun. Like I saw all these things last year and I worked around them, and everything that we did and people got involved in was positive feedback. So just some of these ways, as I said, to overcome the barriers. You got to provide programs and activities for all comfort levels. So even if your province, city, area, territory is wide open, you're going to have to provide some programs for people who aren't comfortable being on court and people who are like, get me out there, I'm ready to go. You might have to offer some online events to keep people engaged. There might be a situation where you can only have a certain number of people inside the club. So you might need those online events to keep the community together. A big one for me was knowing my audience and catering to them, and realizing that some of these modified programs aren't for everybody. You know, you're used to saying, how many people can I get out? I have 50 people in my house league. Well, you might get 15 or 20 in your modified house league, but you might have a couple of different house leagues that maybe eventually add up to 50 to what you used to have. And on that note, starting small and building, I'm running a camp this week with 2 kids, and I'm hoping that their positive experience this week will build, and maybe we get to 10 to 20 down the road. For adult programming, I found that getting involved myself was extremely helpful. When people saw me doing it, or when I said, come join me for this, or I'm competing in this as well, I think people were more likely to try it themselves. And then that word of mouth is going to be huge for us. So positive feedback from members, they talk about it, and they will get other people to join them. So, you know, if you're starting small and you're delivering a good product, the positive feedback from the people who are taking part will spread, and you'll build that momentum. So these are some of the programs that I ran. I will go into some of them in more detail. This is just kind of an overview of a bunch of different ones that were offered. It's kind of broken down in from maybe the most restrictive in terms of solo hitting is the only thing that you're really allowed at the club, or someone's only comfortable being on court by themselves, to more distance drills, into games, actually being on court with other people and taking advantage of those opportunities. So we started stage 1 when we were able to get on court. We started with soloing, a lot of solo routines, solo games, challenges, that sort of stuff. And a big event for me, or a big activity that people really enjoyed, was personalized solo routines. So people would do a lesson with me when they could, or if they couldn't, I would put together, you know, a 10-part solo routine for them and have them record their scores over the period of 5 weeks. And, you know, I'd print it out for them. They'd have all their details of, you know, how long to do each exercise, what counts as a shot that counts to get you a point, and those sorts of things. And I had them say, okay, look, come out and do it twice a week, 5 weeks, come back, let's look at your scores, and we'll adapt from there and see what areas need more work. We did weekly solo hitting challenges as well. So I would go out and record a video of me doing a solo routine. Maybe some of you have seen them on Instagram, not mine, but maybe some of you have seen Chris Hannabury, Serious Squash. He does a lot of solo hitting challenges and that sort of stuff. So basically this was just a copy of that, but it was for my members only. So I'd send them a video of me doing it, saying I got, you know, 50 figure eights, see how many you can get. And people would report their scores, and then I'd put a little leaderboard saying, you know, this is how it broke down. One of our most popular ones, we did a solo hitting tournament. So we had a draw that took place at the lawn, and a draw that took place at the BNR, which is a club that's a few blocks away from us. And you progressed through the tournament, and the winner of the lawn tournament faced off against the winner of the BNR tournament, so to speak. They didn't actually play each other. They just did the competition and then recorded their scores to find the winner. And that's one that I'll go into some more detail with. We did solo hitting junior camps. So 1 kid per court. I did a different routine every day. And again, that's one that you'll see more on that as we go through here. As we got into the fall, later summer, we were able to do some distance drills and games. So I kind of set those up depending on the age group or the level. I either did it as a team where you're trying to work together to get to a certain goal, or as opponents where you're trying to beat each other in a certain game or drill. A lot of my lessons last fall were distance lessons. So it's those same ideas, those same drills, where we're keeping space the entire time on court and just getting creative with how can you give them that workout by doing distance lessons, and also, you know, deliver meaningful coaching to them so that they're feeling like they're improving as well. We also developed a junior skills program, which was just a compilation of different levels where you needed to get a certain number of skills, improve those skills to get to the next level of the program. This is similar to swimming badges, karate belts. Squash Canada once, I don't know if it still exists, but they did have a skills program at one point. So we were really promoting that because that was something that kids could do either on their own or with their parents, and then report their scores back to us, or show us they're doing the test and get their next level. And it was just that idea of going from level 1 to 2 through to 10 that kept kids coming back and wanting to get back on court even when they couldn't play full squash. And then we did a lot of drill of the week videos where Will Malmo, my assistant pro, and we would get on court and demonstrate some of these drills that members might not know how to do or have never seen before, and just break down the key parts of it and add on, this is how to make it more difficult if it's too easy for you, or you can tailor back to this if it's too hard. And so just giving people a visual of some of these new drills that they might be doing. Is there any questions about any of those activities? I'm going to go into some of them in more detail, but if there's any questions, I can answer those now. Jeff, it looks like we're good. So as I said, one of our most popular one was this solo hitting tournament that we did with the BNR. And this is kind of the breakdown that I sent out to our members to recruit them to play in the event. And so it was set up as a draw. So there were 16 players. They came in, they did it themselves. We had a routine set out for them. And you can just see here the different rules that I set out for them on how to do it, right? 2 minutes per exercise. They can take as much time as they want between exercises. For some people, it was a 40-minute routine. For others, it was an hour routine. It just, depending on how much break they wanted. They were recording their own scores. They would tally it up and send it to me. It was all in the honor system. There were people who said, well, how are you going to make sure that this is on the up and up and no one's cheating? And my answer to that was basically, look, we're just trying to get people on court. We're trying to have some fun with this. If someone embellishes a score, it's fairly obvious. If they're beating my score, then it seems like there could be something up there for sure. And I would send updates kind of on a regular basis every couple of days just to show them the updated draw. So the way it worked, and you'll see that the breakdown is you got scores for each activity, and then you took your total score and you matched it against your opponent's total score to see who would go on to the next round. I set deadlines. You can see the deadline was June 11th last year to make sure that they got their scores in. And if they didn't get a score in, then their opponent automatically went through to the next round. And we did a consolation round as well, just to make sure that everyone got 2 opportunities to do the routine. So this is the sample routine. This was the routine that they did for the tournament. So each person would come in here to the club, they would book a court, and they would come on and do these exercises. There's nothing really, we'll go through it a little bit, but there's nothing really groundbreaking in these exercises. They're all pretty basic. They're all things that I'm sure we've done before. We've done with our lessons or juniors on court, straight drives into a taped target, volleys from behind the short line, figure eights, hitting the ball through the court to get to the back door, and sprints. So the idea was I wanted to keep it pretty simple and basic so that everyone would be able to do it and there wouldn't be a whole lot of confusion around it. Everything was set up as a 2-minute interval. So they had their phone or their watch or whatever, and when the alarm went off, that was the end, and they recorded their total for that exercise. So you can see some of them here are targets. So I have a taped out target on the floor, or some of them are simply just the number of balls you were able to hit in that amount of time. So the volleying stuff, the amount of hits is all you really need, because the more skilled player is going to get more volleys in a period of time. And then I also used this as the basis for those personalized solo hitting routines that I talked about earlier. This was kind of where I started, and then I would make adjustments there for people. And some of these exercises might seem a bit difficult for lower levels, and I did do a second division. I did Division 2 as well, where I tweaked the figure eights. I changed a little bit. so that it wasn't it was a easier exercise. And the forehand and backhand door targets I changed for the lower levels to make it something that they'd have a little bit more success at.
Do you have an image of where you taped on the floor?
I don't have an image, but it was sorry, it's that one racket length where half of the target is inside of the service box and the other half of the target is outside of the service box, and about 10 floorboards, 12 floorboards from the sidewall. So it was just towards the tail end of the service boxes where they were landing. And for the lower level, I expanded the target zone to just landing behind the service box before the glass.
Thank you.
And so this one, I think what made this one so popular was the idea that it was a competition. And it was a great equalizer between levels. We had everything from top juniors who were 14 years old to myself. I took part in it. Greg Hutner, who's a former junior national champion, Graham Riding, like all these people got involved, which I think was exciting for people. Is, I'm playing against Mark Porter in my club tournament, which, okay, you're not playing against him, but you are, I guess. And I think that was a draw for a lot of people. And it was just the idea that, we are competing even if we can't be on court together, which was nice after a period of no competition. And then on addition to that, we were in, like I said, we were in a period of solo hitting. So we did a junior solo hitting camp as well. So the format was a 2-hour camp. 1 hour of it was a solo hitting routine, and the other hour was a group workout outside. We ran 2 sessions daily, and we were 1 person per court. And because we were 3 courts at the lawn, we could do up to 6 people, because we could have 3 people outside doing their workout first, 3 people on the court, and then we could swap halfway through. So that gave us an opportunity to cater to a few more members and get more people on court. In the solo hitting, it's important to emphasize technique, put targets, give them control, goals. Otherwise, we know it can get boring. So it's important that we are giving constant feedback, and that we are constantly getting on court and saying, oh, try this way. Oh, I noticed that you're pulling the ball a little bit, or you can't get tight to the wall to get to the target. Adjust your swing this way. It was probably the most active coaching I've ever had to do, because I was pretty aware that someone left on court for a long time by themselves is going to get bored very easily. You can use the ball machine if you have one. So if there was one player that was having difficulty with maybe the volleys, I would have them on the ball machine for that period, and they can work on their volleys, and then the next day they would go off and do it on their own. So the ball machine is a nice addition if you do have access to one, but it's certainly not necessary to run this program. And what I liked about this one, especially last year and even this summer, with some of the uncertainty, it's very easy to adapt this format and include more people. So if the rules change, if the restrictions change, if people get more comfortable, it's very easy to say, okay, you know what, now we can make it a distance drill camp, and those 6 kids no longer have to be in 2 different areas. They can all be on court together, or 2, 2, and 2. And now you can expand your camp out to 12 kids instead of 6. So my planning stages were all about, what am I allowed to do now? And if the rules change, how easy can I adapt that and build on it? So just on the right side here, you can see this was similar to the solo hitting tournament. This was a sample routine. We used 4 minutes per exercise, but that was pretty flexible. If I noticed they were struggling, or if it was easy, or if they were into it, then I could go a little bit longer on some and shorten others. And again, this was one that probably was a first or second day of the camp. So short hitting targets, straight drive targets, same idea. The straight drive target was in the same spot that it was for the solo hitting tournament, or if there were younger kids or not as strong players, I would just expand those targets. So the short hitting target was typically a racket length and a half from the front wall, a full racket length in length, and 12 floorboards wide. And I taped it out with painter's tape so it didn't damage our floors. Backglass in the air is one that I like to do with juniors, especially. It just gets them hitting through the ball and getting that ball all the way to the back of the court. The stronger players can do a floor to glass, so hitting to yourself, straight drive off the front wall, bounce behind the service box off the glass and go again. And then I always try to include something that made them move by themselves. So, a drive Bowes cross is a pretty difficult routine to do on your own. You're definitely moving and can tire yourself out, but it's good for control, them learning how to control the speed of the ball, hitting the shots, but still being able to recover them. So I always try to mix in one that had some movement in it. And then just your volleys above the service line where you're standing at the short line, figure eights, and then a slow one to finish where they feed themselves and hit a little drop into the target at the front of the court. And that was kind of how we finished it. I did try to switch this up every day. So I kept, the basics at the beginning the same, but then as we progressed through the week, I tried to give them some new shots, some new skills to keep it fresh and to keep them engaged. For the workouts, my goal was to expose them to as many different styles and formats of a workout as possible. Sometimes we get some pushback when we get these outdoor sessions or these workout sessions as part of our squash and the kids don't want to do it. I found it was pretty encouraging for them to have something different, to say, hey, this is one type of workout, a Tabata, where you work for 20 seconds, you rest for 10. This is a circuit. This is, all these different ideas of different ways to work out. It kind of made them feel like they were pros, or they were on their way to being pros. And I used very minimal equipment, just carrying it to our location outside or just touching things. We didn't want to share a whole lot of equipment. So I used ladders, pylons, hurdles, and occasionally some resistance bands. But for the most part, it was body weight and very much of like information of, proper technique, how to do these things without hurting yourself, and just getting that experience for the workout. And this is the last section on the junior camps. It is difficult how to keep them motivated. Some of these things we would say are boring, and I was aware of that going into it. And the idea was I want to get these guys back on court, and I wanted them to have fun. I didn't want them to think about squash being this boring activity that they don't want to come back to when even full squash was allowed. And these are kind of good tips to even think about any program, right? Whether you're playing full squash or modified programming, these are all things that'll help you build that program and make them better. So we did testing throughout the week where I would create a big grid on the back glass. I would record everybody's scores, and they could see how they stacked up against other people or against themselves. If there was some discrepancy in the levels in the group, then I would say, don't worry about trying to catch Bill, worry about beating your score from Monday on Wednesday. So that was a good motivator, is to put a number on it. How many were you able to hit in the targets? How many were you hitting in the middle row? Which drills did you have trouble with? Being able to adapt, having modifications ready is going to be huge for us. And it always is, right? That's nothing new for us. But if a drill is too challenging, too easy, you need to switch it quickly, especially in this format, just to make sure that people are staying engaged and into it. Build a routine. Like I said, I started with the same drills every day as a warm-up, and then from there I would add on some more difficult stuff, some new stuff, and just kind of keep it fresh and interesting so it wasn't the same routine every single time. Again, adjust the timing so you can spend less time on the easy ones, more time on the more difficult ones. You can kind of read the group, right? I'm lucky I have 3 courts in a row. I can go back and forth. You can tell when they've had enough of a certain exercise and just keep it moving. One that I didn't used to do, and now I've incorporated into all of my coaching, is I actually wrote the coaching tips on the back glass with a dry erase marker. I used to do it with the routines, but now I do it with the tips as well. And I find because I was bouncing around from court to court, it was good to just put 3 reminders on the back glass. Check your grip, face the side wall, start your racket high, and whatever you've been talking to them about. It just gives them something to kind of come back to. If they're struggling with an exercise and I'm on court 3 with somebody else, they at least have some things to think about before I come back. And the big one was give players a say. It's kids are also coming back to this stuff depending on which region you're in. They might have been doing online school, they might have been going to school in person, but they're coming back to and they want to have some fun, and you'll keep them motivated if you ask them, what do you need to work on? What do you want to work on? You might have your opinions, but if you can always incorporate a little something that they've brought up, I find that goes a long way to keep them engaged. Were there any questions regarding the junior solo camp or the camp structure?
Nothing in the chat, Mark, but if anyone wants to unmute and ask questions, please by all means go ahead. If anyone has any questions at this point.
I think we're good.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and like I said, that you'll see now we go into some more distance drills that these things can evolve. So it doesn't have to be a solo hitting camp if that's not what's necessary in your region. You can branch out and use these same fundamentals for a more engaged camp of 2 people on court, 3 people on court. You can do these things as well. So which brings us into that kind of next section. Is we started with a lot of solo hitting. We moved into same household play, distance drills, and games. So the nice thing about the same household play is full play is permitted. And some places are requiring masks, some places aren't. Full play is fantastic, assuming that everyone has someone in their household that they can play with. So there's some where you have maybe 2 siblings that can play together. Great. But I found that a lot of it was parent-child, or it was siblings with varying skill levels. So they still needed some help on what to do on court once this phase hit. So I put together a few different programs, or just emailed people, hey, I saw you out with your brother, your sister, here's some things you can do. So you can set it up as, with any of these things, as working together or competition. Parent-child working together is a great way to go, because the parent can help the child, as I mentioned with our junior skills program, or trying to get to a certain number of hits. They can work together, both people can have fun, they're both getting some exercise. I didn't actually get to run this Family Feud competition idea that I had, but I think it's a great idea if there's a club out there that wants to steal it and use it. But basically the idea was I would set up a weekly competition or a drill where a parent and child would work together. And it didn't matter the age, it didn't matter the skill level, because you're just going to get a running leaderboard. But it could be something as simple as how many cross courts can father and son, or mother and daughter, mother and son hit together in a given amount of time. Or you could do it with targets. How many can they hit into the land in the service box? And then they would report their score to me. And then I would populate a leaderboard and send it out and say, this family is at the top of the rankings this week. The week 2 competition or the week 2 drill is this. Get out with your family and work on it. And I thought that would be a fun way to get people involved, and maybe parent-child motivated to get together, or siblings motivated to get on court together. We promoted a lot of our junior skills program practice. So we would give the program to the parents and say, your son or daughter is around level 2, they're looking to get to level 3, here's what they need to do to get to level 3. You can get on court with them, you can practice it, and then when you're ready, we can give them their test to get to the next level. Or if they're lucky enough and they do have 2 people a similar level that they can play together, you can use condition games, offer them up to them to equalize that varying skill level. And these are just your basic ones that we know. The stronger player can play straight only, stronger player can play length only, both players can play length only, someone's playing above the service line. No back glass. So if someone hits the ball and it hits the back glass in the air, they win the point automatically. A good one for younger kids is what I call the 5-second game. So it basically means if someone hits a shot that you can't get to, it bounces 2 or 3 times before you get there. As soon as the second bounce, you start counting 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3, up to 5, and you have until that 5 seconds to put the ball back in play and continue the rally. So this has been a good one for siblings because a 12-year-old and 8-year-old can play together, and if the 8-year-old is getting kind of beat up on, they can always run, pick up the ball, put it back in play, and the rally keeps going. So it's a good way to equalize those skill levels. A point slider. So if there's a couple of varying skill levels, you can do one person starts with 3. If they lose that game, they go up to 4, and so on until they find the number that makes it an even game. Or the other one is a win 3 points game, where the stronger player actually has to win 3 points in a row to score 1. And the weaker player scores on every point. So there's little things like that you can always do to maximize those same household games or activities. And again, it's just about kind of getting out there and letting people know. You see 2 people on court struggling, open the door and say, hey, can I offer this suggestion? Why don't you try this game so you guys can have a little bit more fun with this? Which then moves into kind of those distance drills and games. You can do it together, you can do it against each other. This was one that I found is where the adults really started getting into it. 2 adults would get on court together and they would play some modified games, or they would do some distance drills for points. We did a drill of the week. So we would create videos of us doing the drill, explain it, and then we would send it out and say, hey, this is the drill of the week. Why don't you and your partner get out there, try this, let us know what you think. We had permanent targets set up on the floor so that they wanted to do some sort of game where it was maybe a drop drive for points. You hit the target in the front court, you get your point. You hit it in the back court, you get your point there, and they can switch spots. By the time you hit all 4 spots there, you're into a half-hour session at least. And then there's a variety of condition games that you can play that fulfill those requirements of distance on court. So cross-court games, you can do your drop versus drive progressions, where you start with drop versus drive, then you go drop or boast versus drive, then you go drop or boast versus straight or cross-court drive, and you can build up. And that one's a nice one because it's pretty easy to remember, and people go in, and by the time you get through the progressions, you've got a pretty good session and a pretty good workout in. And the other one that we did a lot of was cross-court games on the doubles court. I mean, this is something that a lot of players did even before the pandemic. It's a great way to practice doubles. If you have a doubles court, it's a good way to get some of maybe the older members on court and using that space. And actually, some of my members actually asked me to put a line about halfway between the front wall, and the service line, and the short line, sorry, to put that as an out space as well, so they weren't having to chase down drop shots in the doubles court. They were playing, everything was basically a length game. So if you do have a doubles court, it's a great way to get people involved. Before I move into online stuff, does anyone have any questions or about the drills, the distance drills or activities?
Did you charge anything to do any of that, or to the members, or was it just completely free to the members?
No, I charged for some of it. For things like, if I'm just giving suggestions, I didn't charge for that. But I did find that it did come back in a way. So, if there were 2 siblings hitting on court and I opened the door and said, why don't you guys try this? 9 times out of 10, I got an email from their parent later that night saying, hey, can you bring both of them on court next week at some time and show them these things?
Right.
So there was a mix of paid and free advice. And I realize not everyone's in a position to be able to do stuff like that, but I did find that it did pay off, in the sense that it got people on court and it built up my clients again, and it got people on court and reaching out to me. So yeah, some of it was paid, some of it was unpaid.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, and the last little portion here is just on online activities. I know a lot of us are probably, we might be zoomed out online activity fatigue, but this stuff was very, very important. And I didn't even realize it until I started doing it, how many people reached out to me and said, thank you for organizing these things. It's so great to see all the members again. I don't really feel comfortable coming to the club yet. Or, even when you do come to the club, it's a very different experience than it used to be because you can't have those same social interactions that you did before. So I was hesitant to do them because personally, I'm not a huge online activity fan. But once we did them, they were very successful. So we did online trivia nights, which I'll talk a bit more about. We did some virtual workouts where the club was already streaming their live workouts, and we just kind of piggybacked on it. Um, we did some online poker tournaments with a charity element, so it's $20 to play, and the winner got to pick which charity the pot was donated to. You can do this. You can do something similar with chess, backgammon, euchre. All these apps exist for free online. There's no cost to use them. I was sending out match of the week, so I would go on YouTube, find a free PSA Squash TV video. I would watch a bit of it, and then I would do a little summary and say, hey, look at this match. Watch how Muhammad El-Shorbagy gets up on the tee and volleys a lot, or look how they use length to set up the rally. Just little things that people can look for, because I think there is a large percent of our membership that probably has never even watched Top Squash. So there was a lot of feedback from that. People say, "Well, these guys are amazing. I've never even watched this before." And it was a good opportunity to educate members just on the history of squash. Like, I put a Nicole David clip out there one week, and all her accomplishments, and it was just a good way to kind of build that squash knowledge. We did weekly fitness challenges over Instagram, where we would send out a set fitness challenge saying, a simple one is how many push-ups can you do in a minute? Or another one was how long does it take you to do 100 push-ups, was one that we sent out to kind of our more high performance group. But there's even things like various CrossFit exercises with, there's 4 exercises, you do them 10 times, you record how long it takes you, and then you send in your time, and we compare it, and we can say, okay, Mark was the fastest time this week at 20 minutes and 14 seconds. And lastly, just periodic check-ins. We have a club newsletter, we have an Instagram account. I'm sure everybody has people's email addresses. It's good to just reach out, and those members you haven't seen yet, or you're unsure of what they're going to be up to, it's good to just reach out and say, hey, this is what's going on. You can get involved in this. And I was never trying to convince people of coming to do activities at the club if they didn't want to, but I wanted to make sure that they realize that these things are there and that people are doing them in case they did want to do it and just were unsure. So our 2 most popular online events were trivia nights. I used a free online app called CrowdPer, and we did a Zoom call at the same time. So you were on Zoom and you had a web browser open. The app has free built-in questions that you can create your own quizzes. It also gives you an option to make your own questions and answers and build whatever you want. I started with club history and squash specific stuff, but then as kind of we went through, it became popular, more and more people got involved. Non-squash members of the club got involved, so we kind of switched it to just general questions, all preloaded on CrowdPer. I just selected the ones I wanted and created a 15 question quiz. It was a good way. It was popular with older members as well as families, so parents would log on with their kids, one Zoom screen, one CrowdPer screen, and work together. And then I actually used the app for my junior camps and clinics, where I created a whole bunch of questions about squash rules, tactics, refereeing questions. And so when we were on a break, the kids would just space out. They would jump on their phones. I have a couple tablets, whatever they needed, and they could answer the questions that way. It was very easy to use. I know some since I did this similar presentation with Squash Ontario, I know some other clubs have done the same thing. And it was a fun way just to get that, you're not just on an online social Zoom, you're doing an activity, you go for an hour max, and everyone has fun. They see each other, and you're on your way. The other one that was really big for us were virtual workouts. And as I said, the club was already offering this. It was just something that I reached out to the squash section and said, I'm doing this, come join me. Monday nights, we actually, contrary to most online workout classes, we leave our cameras on and we kind of, have some banter back and forth. And it was a great way for me to reconnect with members. It was a good way for members to get up and moving again for those who weren't so active during more strict lockdown periods. We started out with 6 people from the squash section. We got up to as many as 21. The key to these is you need a good, energetic instructor. I mean, if you're comfortable running it yourself, that's great. For me, we had a great instructor lined up. He was already doing it. We just kind of piggybacked. And as with anything, when you're doing these home workouts, you want to keep it simple, but you want it to be challenging enough that people feel like they got their workout and it was worth their time going. And you want to use limited equipment and mainly body weight stuff. You don't want it to be complicated. You don't want to put barriers in place where people are going to say, you know what, I don't have any dumbbells, I'm not coming. So if you are planning to do something like this, and again, this might be something that you could use even if you're completely open, you might be able to offer a virtual workout because you don't have capacity to have everybody who wants to do the workout come into the club and actually do it. Were there any questions about those two in particular, the online stuff? Okay. And just as a wrap up, I mean, I know I've done a lot of talking and I kind of hit a bunch of different things and I dove deeper into some and not into others, but the important thing I think is for us to remember that people are looking for things to do. They want to be engaged with their club. They want to see their fellow members. They do want to see the staff, interact with the staff. So I think it's important for us to have kind of an open mind and not be so quick to say, you know what, it won't work. I kind of had that mindset for a bit, or I had the idea of like, I don't like doing these sorts of things, so maybe someone else won't like doing them either. But I was very surprised and pleasantly surprised when a lot of these things actually took off and were very popular programs. So it's important for us to be open-minded and to pump it up, and people do want to do these things. We do get a free pass right now as we're reopening. I mean, yes, there are some people out there who are difficult, but at the same time, everyone understands, I think, this is new and there could be some hiccups, there could be some mistakes along the way. It's kind of a great time for us to try new things at our clubs and see what has traction and what doesn't. And if it doesn't, you say, you know what, I tried. It wasn't for us and we won't do it again. But people will notice and they'll appreciate that we are at least trying to deliver programming to cater to all needs. Soliciting feedback from your members is huge. Ask them what they thought of it. What did they think could be improved? It'll just help you get better and better at what you're offering. Get involved yourself. I said this earlier. Members like to do what you're doing. If you're the manager or you're the squash pro or even other departments of your club, if you say, "Hey, I'm doing this," more and more people will show up. And a good example is I started a virtual run club using Strava, and I just started sending people and say, "Hey, come join me. I'm doing this, I'm doing that." And, we're up to 30 people that are doing this on a regular basis. So they will follow your lead. And the last point I want to make is it's what I started with is even if it's not required, adding COVID-friendly programming, distance, solo hitting, all these things, it could bring back players earlier than they expected to, earlier than you expected them to. And it'll keep the social aspect of the club alive, more so with the online stuff as well. But it is something that even as Ontario opens up more, I will still include these things, and I do have members that are asking me for these things. So they are things that can supplement your regular programming and just cater to a larger group of members. And it'll build your program, maybe even get back or above where we were before. So that's kind of an outline of what I've been doing and things that have worked for me. Hopefully people can learn from some of the stuff I've done, and I made mistakes along the way and I tried to leave those out, but hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and deliver a couple of new programs and activities for your members. If anyone has any questions down the road or wants more details on some of the stuff, I can be contacted at squash@torontolawn.com, and I'm happy to help out, send any documents I have of things that we did, or people are asking about photos of the targets. I'm happy to take those photos and send them along. So if there's anything you need to help get these things off the ground, feel free to shoot me an email.
That was amazing, Mark. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. So I certainly open the floor to any questions, whether you want to type them into the chat, which I do have one question for Mark for you to start with, and then if anyone wants to unmute and ask or type them in the chat, please do. So first question comes from Simon Hall down in St. Catharines, just saying, how does the Run Club work? And then it says Strava with a couple of question marks.
Yeah, sorry, Simon, I just kind of glossed over that. There was something new that we just started this spring. There's an app called Strava. You can get it on your phone. You can use it through the computer. You should use it. I guess the phone is the best way to go because it will it'll log your kilometers. So you can create an app. You can create a profile for free. You can create a club for free. So if you download Strava and you look up the Toronto Lawn Tennis Club, we have a run club on there that I created with some pictures and whatever. And it's similar to Facebook or any other social media where I can post and I can issue challenges. I can celebrate members who have maybe hit a milestone in their running. So we started doing that this spring, and Strava also has a bunch of built-in challenges. So one of them being, running 100 kilometers in a month, or running your first 5K, and you can just position those to your members and say, sign up for the challenge, and they give you a little badge when you complete it, so you can tell when they've actually achieved it. So that was a good way for us to bring it together, and is actually the first time we've ever launched a run club here at the club, which will now hopefully move away from a virtual run club on Strava to a real run club in person at the Toronto Lawn over the next few weeks. And I see Spider, Simon, did that answer your question, or is there anything I left out there? And I see Spider wants some photos of the targets. Spider, I can take those.
I did have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I had trouble turning on my mic there for a sec. Now, this is very positive and constructive information, so thank you overall for all this. Strava, is it Strava or Strava? How is it spelled?
Strava with a V. Strava.
Okay, got it. Great,
and
thanks.
there are some features that if you purchase the membership, but I don't think they're necessary. You can run a great run club with the free version of the app. No one needs to pay anything to use it, and it's fantastic.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome. And I just see Spider asked for pictures, so I will make sure to send those over to him. Just make a note of his email address. Yeah, Spider, I'll take some pictures.
You've done a great job adapting, pivoting for COVID. That's for sure. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of it came out of I was keen to get back on court and get back to work, and it was, what is going to let us do these things while following the provincial regulations and municipal regulations, because I don't know about everybody here, but in Toronto, Ontario in general, it has been, it's been a year basically. We had a little window of playing squash full on for a couple of weeks in the fall, but that's really it.
Great, thanks, Mark. Anyone else with questions? I think, as Mark has said, everywhere across the country it's been very different with respect to COVID, but I don't think anywhere in the country compares to what Toronto and the overall Greater Toronto area has gone through. They've been pretty locked down for the entire year and a half, including most of Ontario, and so it's been very tough. And, kudos to Mark for his efforts to try and engage his membership, not just with squash activities, but with other things to just create a very positive social environment for people. So kudos to you, Mark. Any other questions from anyone before we wrap up today? I encourage you to unmute and ask Mark.
Mark Spire here. Recognizing that there are some that still are too hesitant to come back or are just not coming back. Have you got some interesting, new programs to lure new people to the sport going on?
And new people I found was a bit tougher. If they haven't played before, getting them to come out during a pandemic it was a little bit trickier. But that said, we do intro lessons for all new members. I reach out to them and say, hey, you have a free 30-minute session with me to kind of meet me. I teach you about the club. And I was shocked at how many people last October, right before the second, third lockdown, whatever you want to call it, how many people were willing to get on court with me. I think the newer people, personally, I think they do need to get on court with a coach to start. But then I think depending on their level, you could probably push them into any of these things. The solo hitting routine might be the best, because you can give them something a little bit easier for them to work on by themselves, and then you can progress it as they go. Or maybe they get on court with you once every 4 weeks or something, and they do the solo hitting routine in between. But yeah, in terms of new members, I think the first step is going to be being able to get on court with them.
Thank you.
Okay, I think Mark, in the interest of time, if anyone has any other questions, they can absolutely reach out to Mark or myself, and I'm happy to relay to Mark. As with all of our webinars, Squash Canada and our presenters are always happy to answer questions after the fact. So if you think of something later on, please let us know, and we will work to get you an answer, whether it's through us or through Mark as presenter. So on behalf of Squash Canada, first off, Mark, thank you again for your wonderful presentation on COVID squash-friendly programming. It was very informative. And then to our attendees today, I hope you took away something useful to take back to your clubs and to your members. Just a quick reminder that this was our last Squash Canada Coach PD webinar for what I would call the non-existent 2020-2021 season. We were thrilled. We ran over a dozen of these webinars for coaches over the last 6 to 8 months, and we've had a great positive turnout with these webinars. So we will be continuing these again in the fall. Come September, October, we'll just take a summer break and come back with more great topics on squash and coaching, and as well as athlete development and officiating. We have great plans for more webinars come the 2021-2022 season. So stay tuned for that. And if you have ideas on topics, don't hesitate to reach out and let us know. Otherwise, thank you again for attending today, and have a wonderful afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thanks,
Have
Jeff.
a great day.